Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of day that starts with gray skies and a quiet drizzle. The kind of weather that makes you want to stay in bed with a cup of tea and a good book. I was 52, living alone in a cozy little house on Mapplewood Lane, a street where everyone knew each other, but no one really knew each other, if that makes sense. We waved, exchanged pleasantries, and occasionally borrowed a cup of sugar, but that was about it. Life was predictable, comfortable, and if I'm being honest, a little lonely. That morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring out the window at the rain-soaked garden. My hydrangeas were blooming, their blue petals heavy with water, and the oak tree in the backyard swayed gently in the breeze. I was lost in thought, sipping my chamomile tea, when I heard a knock at the door. Now, I wasn't expecting anyone. My son David was busy with his own life in the city, and my friends were all tied up with their families or work. I hesitated for a moment, then set my cup down and walked to the door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see my neighbor Mr. Thompson standing there. He was a tall man in his late 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. He lived 2 doors down, and we'd exchanged a few words here and there over the years, but nothing more than that. He was holding a small wrapped package in his hands, and he looked a little nervous, which was unusual for him. "Good morning, Linda," he said, his voice warm but hesitant. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," I replied, smiling. "What can I do for you, Mr. Thompson?" "Please call me Henry," he said, returning the smile. I noticed you've been working in your garden a lot lately. You've got quite the green thumb." I chuckled. "Well, it keeps me busy. I find it relaxing." He nodded, then held out the package. "I saw this at the farmer's market over the weekend, and I thought of you. It's nothing much, just a little something to brighten your day." I was taken aback. No one had given me a gift like this in years. I took the package, feeling the weight of it in my hands. "Thank you, Henry. That's very kind of you." He shuffled his feet, looking almost shy. "Well, I'll let you get back to your morning. Have a good day, Linda." "You too," I said, watching as he turned and walked back down the path to the sidewalk. I closed the door and unwrapped the package. Inside was a beautiful ceramic planter, painted with delicate flowers and vines. It was the kind of thing I would have picked out for myself. I ran my fingers over the smooth surface, feeling a strange mix of emotions, gratitude, curiosity, and something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. Later that afternoon, I decided to plant a small fern in the planter and place it on my porch. As I worked, I found myself glancing down the street toward Henry's house. I realized I didn't know much about him, other than that he was a widower and had lived on Mapplewood Lane for as long as I had. The next day, I baked a batch of oatmeal cookies, my grandmother's recipe, and walked down to Henry's house. When he answered the door, he looked surprised but pleased. "I wanted to thank you for the planter," I said, holding out the plate of cookies. "It was such a thoughtful gift." He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate it. Would you like to come in for a cup of coffee?" I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that." His house was warm and inviting, with bookshelves lining the walls and a fireplace in the living room. We sat at his kitchen table, sipping coffee and talking about everything from gardening to travel to our favorite books. I was surprised by how easy it was to talk to him, how comfortable I felt in his presence. As I walked home that evening, I realized how much I had missed this kind of connection. It wasn't just the gift or the cookies. It was the way Henry had taken the time to notice me, to see me as more than just the woman who lived 2 doors down. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the unexpected kindness of my neighbor and how it had touched me in a way I hadn't expected. It was a small gesture, but it had opened a door to something new, something I hadn't realized I was missing. The days that followed Henry's unexpected gift felt different somehow, like the world had shifted just a little, revealing colors I hadn't noticed before. The rain cleared and the sun came out, casting a golden glow over Mapplewood Lane. My garden seemed to respond to the change, the flowers blooming brighter, the leaves greener. Or maybe it was just me, seeing everything through a new lens. I found myself thinking about Henry more often. Our conversation over coffee had been so easy, so natural. It wasn't just the topics we discussed, it was the way he listened. Really listened. As if every word I said mattered. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that kind of connection until it was right there in front of me. A few days later, I was out in the garden, pruning the roses, when I heard footsteps on the sidewalk. I looked up and saw Henry walking toward me, his hands in his pockets and a smile on his face. "Good morning, Linda," he said, stopping at the edge of my yard. "Those roses are stunning. You've got quite the talent." I wiped my hands on my apron and smiled back. "Thank you, Henry. They're my pride and joy. Would you like to come in for a closer look?" He nodded, and I led him through the gate, pointing out the different varieties, the deep reds, the soft pinks, the creamy whites. He listened intently, asking questions and admiring the blooms. "You know," he said after a while, "I've always wanted to have a garden like this, but I've never had the patience for it. I admire your dedication." "It's not as hard as it looks," I replied. "It just takes time and a little love." He chuckled. "Well, maybe you could teach me a thing or two." I hesitated for a moment, then said, "I'd be happy to. Why don't you come by tomorrow morning and we can get started?" His eyes lit up. "I'd like that." "Thank you, Linda." The neighborhood was painted in shades of gold and red. Henry and I had been spending more and more time together, not just gardening, but also sharing meals, watching movies, and even taking a few day trips to nearby towns. It felt like we were building something special, something real. But then, the storm rolled in. It started as a distant rumble of thunder, a dark line of clouds on the horizon. By evening, the wind had picked up and the rain was coming down in sheets. I stood at my living room window, watching the trees sway and the rain pound against the glass. The power flickered once, twice, then went out completely, plunging the house into darkness. I fumbled for a flashlight and lit a few candles, trying to make the best of it. But as the storm raged on, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in my chest. Then I heard it, a loud crash, followed by the sound of splintering wood. My heart leaped into my throat. I grabbed my raincoat and flashlight and ran outside, the wind whipping my hair and the rain soaking through my clothes in seconds. I followed the sound to Henry's house, where I saw the source of the noise. A massive oak tree in his backyard had been struck by lightning and had fallen, crashing through part of his roof. My stomach dropped. "Henry!" I shouted, rushing to his front door. I pounded on it, my heart racing. "Henry, are you okay?" The door opened, and there he was, looking shaken but unharmed. "Linda," he said, his voice tight with worry. "I'm fine, but the tree, it came through the roof." I stepped inside, shining my flashlight around. The damage was worse than I thought. The tree had smashed through the corner of the living room, sending debris everywhere. Rain was pouring in through the hole in the roof, soaking the carpet and furniture. "We need to get you out of here," I said, grabbing his arm. "It's not safe." He hesitated, looking around at the mess. "But my house." "Your house can be fixed," I interrupted. "But you can't stay here tonight. Come on, you're coming to my place." He didn't argue. I helped him gather a few essentials, some clothes, his medications, a photo of Margaret, and we hurried back to my house through the driving rain. Once we were inside, I handed him a towel and a dry set of clothes. "Go get changed," I said. "I'll make some tea." By the time he came back downstairs, I had a pot of chamomile tea steeping on the stove and a fire crackling in the fireplace. He sat down on the couch, looking exhausted and overwhelmed. "Thank you, Linda," he said quietly. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come." I handed him a mug of tea and sat down beside him. "You don't have to thank me. That's what friends are for." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm outside and the crackling of the fire. The power was still out, but the candles cast a warm, flickering light that made the room feel cozy despite the chaos outside. "You know," Henry said after a while, "this reminds me of a night I spent with Margaret during the hurricane. We were young, just married, and we didn't have much. But we had each other, and that was enough." I smiled, feeling a lump form in my throat. She sounds like an amazing woman. She was, he said, his voice soft. And you remind me of her in so many ways. His words caught me off guard, and I felt my cheeks flush. Henry, He reached over and took my hand, his grip warm and steady. Linda, I know this might not be the right time, but I need to say it. These past few months with you have meant more to me than I can put into words. You've brought light back into my life, and I don't want to let that go. I looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and vulnerability there. My heart was pounding, but for the first time in a long time, it wasn't from fear or uncertainty. It was from hope. Henry, I said softly, you've brought light into my life too. I didn't realize how much I needed someone like you until you came along. He smiled, a slow, warm smile that made my heart swell. Then maybe we can figure this out together. I nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. Together. The storm raged on outside, but inside, it felt like the sun had come out. We sat there holding hands and talking late into the night, until the rain finally stopped and the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows. The morning after the storm dawned clear and bright, the kind of day that makes you believe in fresh starts. The air smelled of damp earth and fallen leaves, and the sunlight streaming through my windows felt like a promise. Henry and I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and eating toast with jam, the events of the previous night still fresh in our minds. I should call the insurance company, Henry said, breaking the comfortable silence. And maybe a contractor to take a look at the damage. I nodded, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. We'll figure it out, one step at a time. He smiled, his eyes warm with gratitude. I don't know what I'd do without you, Linda. You don't have to find out, I replied, smiling back. Over the next few days, we worked together to get Henry's house back in order. The insurance adjuster came and assessed the damage, and a contractor started repairs on the roof. It was a lot of work, but it felt good to be doing something tangible, something that brought us even closer together. One golden evening, after an exhausting day spent clearing debris, sweeping broken branches, and sorting through boxes of Henry's water-damaged keepsakes, we finally allowed ourselves a moment to rest. The weight of the day still clung to our muscles, and a faint scent of wet leaves and fresh earth lingered in the air. We sat side by side on the old wooden porch of my house, each of us cradling a warm mug of tea in our hands. The porch light flickered gently behind us, casting a soft glow over the worn floorboards, while the world in front of us bloomed into color. The sky above Mapplewood Lane was transformed into a living painting, a magnificent blend of pinks, oranges, and purples melting into one another. The last rays of sunlight spilled across the rooftops and treetops like honey, bathing everything in a warm, tranquil glow. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just sat, breathing it all in, letting the quiet wrap around us like a blanket. Then Henry broke the silence, his voice low but clear in the stillness. You know what? He said, glancing over at me with a softness in his eyes that made my heart stir. I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other night about figuring this out together. I turned toward him, my heart skipping a beat at the earnestness in his voice. The way he looked at me, steady, open, vulnerable, made everything else fade into the background. He took a long breath, as though he were gathering all the courage he had, and then he continued, his words slow and deliberate. I don't want to waste any more time, Linda. Life's too short, and honestly, I've already spent far too much of it alone. I've gotten used to the quiet, to the empty spaces, but since you came into my life, everything feels different. Full. Brighter. I want to be with you, truly with you, if you'll have me. His confession hung in the air, tender and raw. My eyes filled with tears before I could stop them. I blinked quickly, trying to keep my vision clear because I didn't want to miss a single second of that moment, of his face, his words, the sincerity shining through all of it. A warmth blossomed in my chest, overwhelming and beautiful. I had been waiting so long to hear something like that, without even realizing it. Henry, I said softly, my voice trembling with emotion, I feel the same way. Truly I do. I've spent so many years on my own, convincing myself I was fine, telling myself I didn't need anyone. But the truth is, I had no idea just how empty that quiet could be until you came into my life and filled it with laughter, with warmth, with presence. I paused, letting the moment settle between us, our eyes locked in a gaze that spoke more than words ever could. I didn't realize how much I needed someone like you. I continued, until you showed up, not just at my door that rainy morning, but again and again, with your kindness, your patience, your unwavering way of just seeing me, and loving me anyway. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he reached over and gently took my hand in his. His grip was warm, firm, grounding. It wasn't just the touch, it was the intention behind it. The quiet promise that whatever came next, he would be there. "Then let's do this," he said, his voice low and full of quiet conviction. "Let's build a life together. Whatever that looks like, whatever shape it takes, let's do it side by side." Tears welled in my eyes again, but this time, they weren't from sadness or longing. They were from something deeper: joy, relief, hope. I nodded slowly, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt truly steady, like my heart had finally found solid ground. "Together," I whispered, the word full of meaning, full of the future we hadn't even begun to fully imagine yet. What followed in the days and weeks to come felt like a blur, a beautiful, emotional whirlwind of change and decision-making. Henry's house, though damaged by the storm, was soon repaired by a steady stream of contractors and helping hands. But even as his home was being restored, it became clear that something else had shifted, something in the way we gravitated toward one another without hesitation. He began spending more time at my house, not just for dinners or early morning coffee, but for whole afternoons, lazy Sundays, and eventually nights that melted into mornings. Slowly, seamlessly, the boundaries between his space and mine began to blur, until it felt like we were already sharing a life in all the ways that mattered. We talked for hours in the quiet corners of the house, curled up on the couch, hands entwined, or side by side while folding laundry or making dinner. We dreamed out loud about the future, sketching the outlines of what our shared life might look like. Conversations that had once felt distant or theoretical, about merging our routines, combining our homes, planning trips we'd always meant to take, became real, tangible, thrilling. We spoke about travel, about wandering through old towns and sitting by the sea, about returning to places we'd loved in younger years, but this time, together. We imagined what it would be like to grow older side by side, not with dread, but with quiet excitement. The kind that comes from knowing you're no longer facing the world alone. It was a kind of happiness I had almost forgotten was possible. A kind that didn't come with fireworks or grand declarations, but with soft mornings, shared glances, and the comfort of knowing someone was always there. Together. That word, so simple, yet so powerful, had taken root in both our hearts, and every day that passed made it feel more and more like home. It was exciting and terrifying and wonderful all at once, this beautiful, unexpected chapter unfolding before us. Every step forward we took felt like a leap, and yet there was a strange, comforting sense of rightness to it all. Like our hearts had been waiting, quietly and patiently, for this exact moment. One crisp October morning, with the golden sun casting long shadows across the lawn and the air carrying the earthy scent of fallen leaves, we decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. The world outside had turned into a living canvas. Burnt oranges, deep burgundies, honey yellows, and fiery reds painted the trees in every direction. The kind of morning that makes you breathe a little deeper, walk a little slower, and hold the moment just a little longer. Henry slipped his hand into mine as we stepped off the porch, his fingers curling around mine with a familiarity that still sent a little flutter through my chest. The sidewalk was littered with crisp leaves that crunched gently beneath our shoes. A soft breeze danced through the trees, rustling branches above us, and I pulled my scarf a little tighter around my neck as we walked. There was something so simple and beautiful about it. Just the two of us, side by side, matching each other's steps, with no place to rush off to and nothing pressing to discuss. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of shared memories, of quiet understanding, of peace. As we strolled past a particularly stunning maple tree, its leaves a brilliant, fiery red that shimmered in the morning light like embers in a fire, Henry slowed his steps. He gazed up at the branches for a moment, lost in thought. Then, in a voice quiet but certain, he said, "You know, I think Margaret would have liked you." I stopped walking and turned to look at him, surprised by both the mention and the sentiment. My heart gave a little lurch. "Really?" I asked softly, unsure whether I was intruding on something sacred. He nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the rustling leaves above, though his gaze seemed far away, somewhere deep in memory. "Yes," he said, his voice tinged with something tender and aching. "She always had this way of seeing the good in people. She would have seen it in you right away. The way you care for others, the strength in your kindness, the way you bring calm into a room, even when things feel like they're falling apart." He paused, then turned to look at me, his expression filled with both longing and something else, something warmer. Present. Real. She used to say I needed someone who could keep me grounded, but who wouldn't be afraid to challenge me when I got stubborn. Someone with heart and fire and gentleness all rolled into one. That's you, Linda. I felt the air catch in my lungs, my eyes stinging with sudden emotion. It was one of the most beautiful things anyone had ever said to me, and to hear it spoken in connection to someone he had loved so deeply made it feel like both a gift and a quiet blessing. I reached out and squeezed his hand a little tighter, unsure how to say thank you in a way that captured everything I felt. We stood there for a moment, just the two of us beneath that brilliant tree, surrounded by the quiet rustle of leaves and the warmth of something unspoken but deeply understood. She always said I needed someone who could keep me on my toes. Someone with a kind heart and a strong spirit. That's you, Linda. His words hung in the air between us, as gentle as the breeze that rustled the autumn leaves above our heads. There was something in the way he said it, so sure, so quietly reverent, that it reached into a tender part of me I didn't even know was still waiting to be seen. Tears filled my eyes again, uninvited but welcome, welling up with emotion that had been gathering for months, maybe even years. But this time, I didn't try to blink them away. I let them fall. I let myself feel it, every bit of the gratitude, the awe, the love. "Thank you, Henry," I whispered, my voice soft, full, almost breaking. "That means more to me than you know." He stopped walking then, slowing us to a gentle halt on the leaf-dusted sidewalk. The world seemed to pause with him. He turned toward me, his face bathed in the golden light of late morning, and he took both of my hands in his, firm, steady, warm. There was no trembling, no uncertainty in his grip, just quiet intention. "Linda," he said, his voice deeper now, richer, filled with a kind of honesty that only comes after a lifetime of knowing what truly matters. "I know we're not young anymore. Our hair's a little grayer, our steps a little slower, but I think we've got a lot of good years ahead of us." He looked at me then, not just at me, but into me, with eyes full of hope and courage. "And I want to spend every one of them with you." I could feel my heart swelling in my chest, like it was trying to make space for something bigger than it had ever held before. It wasn't just the words, it was everything behind them. The vulnerability, the strength, the love. I smiled through my tears, not caring anymore if they streaked down my cheeks. They were the kind of tears that came from feeling something true, something rare. "I want that too, Henry," I said, my voice trembling with joy. "More than anything." And then he leaned in, slowly, gently, as if making sure I was ready. I met him halfway, and when his lips touched mine, it wasn't like a scene from the movies. It was something quieter, deeper, something sacred. It was a kiss that spoke of new beginnings and long-held dreams, of second chances and promises still to come. A kiss that said we're here, and this is real. In that moment, surrounded by the vibrant beauty of the season, the red and gold leaves fluttering around us like confetti from the trees, the sun warming our backs, the breeze soft as a whisper, I knew, with a calm certainty, that this was only the beginning. the beginning of something deeply meaningful and beautifully unexpected. As we continued our walk down that familiar street, hand in hand, the sun casting golden shadows along the sidewalk and the satisfying crunch of fallen leaves beneath our feet, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Real, soul-deep peace. And gratitude. Gratitude for Henry, for his patience, his courage, his quiet persistence. For the life we were shaping together, one moment at a time. For the way love had tiptoed back into my life when I wasn't even looking for it. Life had thrown us its share of curveballs. We'd both known heartbreak, loss, and the weight of solitude. But somehow, through all the noise and the stillness, we had found each other. And not just found, but recognized. As if something in us had been waiting, quietly hoping, for the other to appear. And as I looked ahead to the path in front of us, wrapped in the colors of fall and the promise of everything yet to come, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever seasons we would walk through next, we would face them side by side. Because sometimes, the most beautiful things in life don't arrive with fanfare. They come quietly, softly, and exactly when you least expect them. Thank you for staying with us. If you find it interesting and useful, please subscribe, like, and share so you don't miss the next video. Thanks.